Popular figures like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos come to mind when discussing the world's wealthiest individuals. There is no doubting that they are self-made billionaires, but have you ever considered those who held these billionaire titles long before the majority of us were alive? Men began amassing wealth many years ago and have since made history. I give you the list of the top 5 males in terms of wealth throughout time. 5. Cornelius Vanderbilt. The Commodore, or Cornelius Vanderbilt, was an American business tycoon who amassed wealth through railroads and shipping. He lived from May 27, 1794, to January 4, 1877. After working for his father's company, Vanderbilt rose through the ranks to assume leadership roles in the inland water trade and made investments in the railroad sector, which was experiencing rapid growth. As a result, the geography of the United States was significantly altered. Vanderbilt was the head of the affluent and powerful Vanderbilt family, and one of the wealthiest people in history and in general. He made the initial gift to establish Nashville, Tennessee's Vanderbilt University. He was regarded as a rude brote. Even though Vanderbilt had a reputation for being a scoundrel, crafty, and aggressive, he was actually a much better builder than a wrecker who was honorable, shrewd, and diligent. Vanderbilt used his money to buy steamboats, buy real estate, lend it to other business people, and buy shares in private companies. Grand Central Station, one of the biggest train terminals in the world, was built with millions of his dollars. Vanderbilt's estimated net worth at the time of his passing at the age of 82 was $105 million. Even though he might have had a poor attitude, he did work hard to accumulate his money. Surprise! None of the heirs managed to keep the wealth in the end. The Vanderbilt family has no members who were among the richest persons in the country. No one had even $1 million left when the 120 Vanderbilt family members convened at Vanderbilt University for their first family reunion in 1973. As astonished as you are, so am I. 4. Jacob Fugger. Jacob Fugger of Bellilli, sometimes known as Jacob Fugger the Rich, or sporadically Jacob II, was a significant German businessman, banker, and miner who lived from March 6, 1459 until December 30, 1525. He was born in the mixed imperial city of Augsburg and later elevated through marriage to Grand Burgher of Augsburg. He was a member of the merchant family of Fugger. He quickly grew the family business into a company with operations across all of Europe. At the age of 14, he started his schooling in Venice, where he also lived until 1487. At the same time, he was a cleric and held several prebendaries. Even though he lived in a monastery, Jacob found time to study the history of investment in early Asian markets. The foundation of the family's wealth was created mainly by the textile trade with Italy. The company expanded quickly after the brothers Ulrich, George, and Jacob started conducting banking business with the House of Habsburg and the Roman Curia. They also started mining operations in Tyrol and, starting in 1493, silver and copper extraction in the kingdoms of Bohemia and Hungary. Jacob Fugger earned his reputation and long legacy through his foundations in Augsburg. The brothers' tombs are located in a chapel he funded and constructed from 1509 to 1512. It is Germany's earliest Renaissance structure. When adjusted for inflation, his net worth at the time of his death was about 2 million guilders, or about $328 billion in 2021 dollars. Fugger's riches was equal to 2% of Europe's GDP at the time of his death in 1525. Europe as a whole. Why the hell not? Stocks, bonds, real estate, and gold coins are claimed to have made up the other 4 equal portions of Fugger's enormous riches. His annualized return over 33 years was reportedly 12%. Fugger took a lot of financial risks up until the age of 40. 3. Henry Ford. Henry Ford, an American businessman and business tycoon who founded the Ford Motor Company and was a key proponent of the assembly line method of mass manufacturing, lived from July 30, 1863, to April 7, 1947. He took out a loan of $28,000 in 1903 to start the Ford Motor Company. Ford became wealthy thanks to the early automobiles made by this company, which also gave him time to work on the Model T, a more ambitious project. This man began his firm with a loan and became a billionaire. Really impressive. By creating the first automobile that middle-class Americans could afford, he converted the automobile from an expensive luxury into an accessible conveyance that profoundly impacted the landscape of the 20th century. Mr. Ford did a good job making goods affordable. As the Ford Motor Company owner, he became one of the richest and best-known people in the world. He is credited with Fordism, the mass production of inexpensive goods and high worker wages. Ford had a global vision, with consumerism as the key to peace. His intense commitment to systematically lowering costs resulted in many technical and business innovations, including a franchise system that put dealerships throughout North America and major cities on 6 continents. Ford prepared for his family to have permanent control of the Ford Foundation and gave the majority of his enormous riches to it. What if a Ford were derived from the name Ford, because this man undoubtedly made items inexpensive? Up until his passing, Henry Ford was the owner of Ford Motor Company. Despite Ford's market share rapidly declining, his net wealth was estimated to be $1.2 billion by the middle of the 1920s. At the time of his passing, his net worth was $200 billion after inflation. He is now among the richest people to have ever lived as a result. 2. John D. Rockefeller. Business tycoon and philanthropist John Davison Rockefeller Sr. was born in America on July 8, 1839, and died on May 23, 1937. He has long been regarded as the richest American of all time. He was born in upstate New York into a big family that traveled about a lot before settling in Cleveland, Ohio. He also started working as an assistant bookkeeper at the age of 16, and at the age of 20, he entered into his first of many business partnerships, focusing on oil refining. In 1870, Rockefeller established the Standard Oil Company. Rockefeller purchased oil-filled fields in Ohio knowing they included sour oil. He then trusted his research and development staff to figure out how to eliminate the oil impurities, which they finally accomplished, enabling him to profit from oil that nobody else wanted. He served as its manager and biggest shareholder until 1897. He amassed a wealth worth close to 2% of the country's GDP, becoming its first billionaire. You read that correctly, 2% of the national economy. Do you need me to tell you just how huge and prosperous America is? In 1913, it was estimated that he was worth $900 million, or about 3% of the $39.1 billion in US GDP that year. That was his highest net worth, which equals $24.7 billion US dollars. Rockefeller spent much of the last 40 years of his life in retirement at Kikuit, his estate in Westchester County, New York, defining the structure of modern philanthropy, along with other key industrialists such as steel magnate Andrew Carnegie. His fortune was mainly used to create the modern systematic approach of targeted philanthropy through the creation of foundations that had a major effect on medicine, education, and scientific research. One thing I admire about these men is how they used their wealth for good. 1. Andrew Carnegie. Industrialist and philanthropist Andrew Carnegie was a Scottish-American who lived from November 25, 1835, to August 11, 1919. In the late 19th century, he oversaw the growth of the American steel industry and amassed a fortune of $310 billion, making him one of the wealthiest people in American history. After beginning his career as a telegrapher, Carnegie amassed wealth by the 1860s through investments in oil derricks, railroad sleeping cars, bridges, and railroads. Carnegie took over as railroad division supervisor from his boss in 1859. While holding this position, he made lucrative investments in a number of firms, including a maker of railroad sleeper carriages as well as coal, iron, and oil industries. As a bond salesman, he increased his wealth by raising money for American businesses operating in Europe. He donated about 90% of his wealth, amassed during the course of his last 18 years, to foundations, charities, and educational institutions. This fortune is estimated to be worth $350 million, or about $5.5 billion, in 2021. Where was I, exactly? The remainder of Carnegie's life was devoted to extensive charity, with a focus on local libraries, international peace, education, and scientific research. He established the Carnegie Corporation of New York, the Carnegie Museums of Pittsburgh, and other institutions with the money he amassed from his business dealings. He also built Carnegie Hall in New York, the Peace Palace, and other structures. In his 1889 essay titled The Gospel of Wealth, he exhorted the wealthy to use their wealth to advance society. Undoubtedly a terrific man who is also heart-rich. In 1901, he sold the Pittsburgh-based Carnegie Steel Company to J.P. Morgan, doubling his wealth and surpassing John D. Rockefeller. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and turn on the notification button for our next update.